So I don't know if you've heard, but there's been some buzz about an earthquake that happened in New Jersey on Friday. There's also a lot of buzz about a total eclipse that's happening tomorrow. Does anyone have plans to go and see the eclipse? I know a number of our members, and Debbie is traveling to go and see this in total totality in some places in our country. For 2 minutes or for 3.5 minutes of the totality, the moon completely covers the sun, casting a shadow on the earth. It has been described as a phenomenal, spectacular, celestial event that you don't want to miss. And most people who have witnessed an eclipse in their lifetime say that it is once in a lifetime experience. Some people have been moved to tears in the moment. Crowds gasp and scream as totality sets in. Some people have even described feeling different, spiritually and emotionally, after witnessing such an incredible event. And then within minutes, the main event is over, and life returns to normal until, as science predicts, 2044 in Montana or North Dakota, or in 2079 in Maine, when it is predicted to happen again. Imagine the buzz after Jesus rose from the dead and the disciples experienced the once-in-a-lifetime event of the resurrection. As Easter people, we retell this incredible story over and over again, year after year, as the hallmark of our faith. Revisiting Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem at the start of Holy Week, recalling the intimate gathering of Jesus and his disciples in the upper room on Maundy, Thursday, and reliving the devastating turn of events through our Tenebrae service here at Westside of Jesus' arrest, his suffering, and crucifixion. All to lead us to a joyful celebration on Easter Sunday. And what an incredible Sunday we had here last week, if you were able to join us. This place was vibrating with joy and music and energy and alleluias. And then, as quickly as it came, the celebration ended. And on Monday, our lives went back to normal too. Peter is not so different from us in today's story. His response to the post-resurrection accounts with Jesus follow a typical human pattern. He had an intense experience, and when it begins to fade, he returns to what he knows. There have been 2 post-resurrection experiences with Peter and Jesus prior to today's text. He returns to something that feels normal. What does he do? He leads the disciples on a fishing expedition. I imagine there must have been something soothing to return to a familiar practice of taking up your net and dropping it into the water the way that they had done years before saying yes to following Jesus. But as our story and verses proclaim, before today's story rather, after fishing all night, they came up empty-handed. And that's when Jesus shows up on the lakeshore to give them a little bit of direction by instructing them to put their nets on the other side of the boat, as if maybe they hadn't thought of that already. But we meet them today on the lakeshore, having breakfast with the risen Jesus after they followed his direction and instruction and caught an enormous amount of fish. And our story hones in on this really important conversation between Jesus and Peter. Have you ever been asked a question 3 times? This is not the first time Peter is asked a question 3 times, we learn in the scriptures. We know that after Jesus was arrested, Jesus predicted that Peter would deny him 3 times. 3 times he indeed said, "I do not know him." Because Jesus knows this, he gives Peter another chance here at the lakeshore. "Peter, do you love me?" he asks. Peter answers yes, 3 times in a row. When Jesus repeats things in the scriptures, we can be confident that we are to pay attention. And today's story is the heart of the matter, of what it means. Jesus wants Peter and us to take seriously his commission to feed his sheep, to tend his sheep, and both of these things are at the heart of loving him. It also emphasizes the importance of love and service as a part of following him. All of us here today are on a journey. Some have been on the journey of faith longer than others. And if you've been walking with faith for any amount of time, you know, as I do, that it is not just about saying yes to X, Y, and Z and believing this or that. It's also not about nice, easy answers. Instead, it is about our response to God, saying yes at some point in our lives, and then living into the how of what it means to follow Jesus faithfully. The disciples said yes to faith, just like each of us who have been confirmed in the faith or who have made a personal proclamation of faith at some point in our lives and also said yes. And it is that yes that is the heart of being a disciple and a student and a follower of Jesus. Our natural instinct, I think, is to pretend that we don't actually need to change anything about ourselves after we say yes. But after the Easter celebration we had last week and our lives returned to normal, the obligations and stress of daily living have just taken over perhaps this last week. This is the moment that our eyes are opened, that we too can have a resurrection moment in our own lives, where our daily living, we can begin to again put God first, to love God and love our neighbor. Whether we mean to or not, we might get overwhelmed or disheartened by this call. It seems so impossible some days, doesn't it? We might throw up our hands and just not even try at all. But if we're open, post-resurrection, in this season of Easter in the church, perhaps we can lean in a little bit and allow Jesus' commission and call to stretch us beyond the point of comfort and to grow as his disciples. In fact, we say yes every day when we take our next faithful step down the road and the path that God lays before us to love and to serve others well. Through our service, we can experience the power of the resurrection and bear witness to Christ's love in the world. As followers of Jesus, following is not as complicated in what we are called to do as we sometimes make it. Jesus gave us the perfect example. When he saw someone in need, what did he do? He responded. When children or a troubled woman needed attention, he stopped and he took the time to merely listen. When he saw people who were hungry, he fed them. And he changed the world forever through his actions of love and compassion. When we do the same thing, when we use our abilities, our gifts, and passion to love others and to make a difference right where we are, the best thing we can do is to serve God by loving those he's placed in our path, in our daily living. Sometimes we think we have to carve out a day or a week to go and serve, but it also can be right in front of us when we say yes to opportunities. Baking cookies for coffee hour brings delight to those who enjoy them after worship. Going to Patterson for an afternoon to serve the women and children at Oasis a meal means they will not have an empty stomach that night. Greeting on a Sunday morning offers a warm welcome to those coming to worship who may be carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders and are simply looking for a ray of hope. Serving on a committee or working behind the scenes here at Westside helps usher in community and connection. Mentoring children or youth helps shape the next generation in faith. And simply sharing a smile with a stranger or opening the door for them can change the trajectory of their day. Have you had your life transformed by the service of someone else in your life, offering you love and care and compassion, whether you were in a time of need or just going about your daily living? I named today ways to serve with the church, but there are numbers of ways that don't include being within these walls or our opportunities to serve. Think about all the people that you come in contact with daily and the ways that you might serve them simply by sharing an extension of God's love and compassion through your actions. Of course, we know that this way of living is countercultural. And we have so many messages that tell us that we are supposed to be first, put ourselves first, not others. We are to win. We are to be number one, the best. Do what we can in the world to get ahead. But as our story today highlights, getting ahead has nothing to do with God's mission in the world. In fact, it is the exact opposite of winning, which we see so clearly in the commission to Peter and to us to love and to serve God faithfully. God's mission is not getting ahead as number one, but about sacrifice and humility and love. I'll never forget hearing the story of the 1976 Special Olympics, where during the 100-yard dash, there were 9 contestants, all of them physically or mentally disabled. All 9 of them assembled at the starting line, and at the sound of the gun, they took off. But one little boy stumbled, and he fell, and he began to cry. The other 8 children heard the boy crying. They slowed down. They turned around. They saw him on the ground, and they ran back to him. Every one of them ran back to him. One little girl with Down syndrome bent down and kissed the boy and said, "This will make it all better." The little boy got up, and he and the rest of the runners linked their arms together and joyfully walked to the finish line, arm in arm, together, finishing the race at the exact same time. When they did, as you can imagine, everyone in the stadium stood up and cheered and hooted and hollered and whistled for a very long time. People who were there are still telling this story with delight. People like myself who remember hearing this story years ago are telling it again today with delight. Friends, people will talk and share about their experience of seeing or missing the eclipse for weeks and for months to come. As Christians, we have been telling the story of the empty tomb for more than 2,000 years. Fred Rogers has said that the people who continue to tell the story of the 1976 Olympics do so because deep down we know that what matters most in this life, much more than winning for ourselves, what matters most is helping others to win too, even if it means slowing down, even if it means changing our course now and then. Paul writes to the Philippians in the passage I read and tells them to have the same mindset as Christ, who humbled himself and became a servant for our sake. It reminds us that true greatness comes not from status or from power, but from serving others in humility and with love. By following Christ's example, we can demonstrate our love for him and experience the transforming power of the resurrection in our own lives. Through service, we can bear witness to the love of Christ in the world. So let us, as a community of faith, as individuals called to be little Christs in the world, let us heed Jesus' call to love him through service and follow his example of sacrificial love and compassion in our daily living. For when we serve and love others, we too are changed. In the name of the risen Christ, amen.